Welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. We are the news division of United Network, and our mission is to bring you the real news. So what's really going on out there? That includes lots of content that we release throughout the week. We've got in-depth news coverage, which includes local stories told through the eyes of our incredible field messengers. These are everyday people like you that are telling us what's going on in their community. We talk about the restoration of our planet and how we're creating the new Earth. And we have intelligence agency updates from the Global Intelligence Agency, or the GIA. And if you haven't heard of them before, that is by design because the beings that originally created the GIA don't want you to really know what's going on behind the scenes. But this is the agency that would control all other agencies on the planet. And even though we are not too fond of many of the three-letter agencies out there and what they've done to harm humanity, the GIA is not under the original leadership. There are good beings that are trying to help humanity, some of which are human, that are now part of the GIA. And so we get updates on what's really happening on this planet. And a lot of times it blows your mind. Today's GIA update it's one for the record books, really. You're going to have to take some notes with this one. It just amazes me what's really going on our planet compared to the mundane conversations that you guys may find yourself in, that I find myself in, and just trying to fit in with society on a day-to-day level. I'm just like, Christmas shopping, what? What are you talking about? Do you know what's happening on this planet? Anyway, I can talk to you guys about it, right? We'll have our own little therapy session here. So we talk about this kind of stuff because you need to know what's going on in order to make the best decisions for yourself, for your life, for your family, and beyond, right? This has a lot of significance for you. And most people aren't talking about this. Most of the stuff out there is just all canned stuff, or it's all controlled. And that's not what we want to do. We want to give you the information and you do with it what you want. You want to believe it? Great. You don't want to believe it? That's okay too. But we're here to provide the information and you do with it, as you please. What we're doing here on this podcast is it's basically a week in review. So for all the content that we release throughout the week, sometimes you miss stuff, right? Or perhaps you're not a member, so you don't have access to the stuff right when we release it. And so we like to provide this podcast as a quick update for you guys of the different stories that we covered over the last week. Now, if you want more information about us and what we do, visit our website at unitednetwork.earth. I did mention we have a membership. It's not a lot of money, but if you want the content right when it comes out of the gate, then you need to become a member. If not, about a week later, it comes out on YouTube and Rumble. Our reports do. However, we can't guarantee it's going to stay up there because, they don't like us so much. They shadow ban us and do all this other crazy stuff. So we know if it's on our app, if it's on our site, then you guys can have access to it. With any information we put out, I always encourage you guys, really think about stuff, think critically. We have been fed so many lies throughout our lives that it's sometimes hard to discern what's right? What feels like truth for us. And like I said, if something doesn't sit right with you, that's okay. Just put it to the side. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? Because you're going to hear a lot of stuff today that you've probably never heard of before, and that's because we didn't even know stuff was going on until we need to know about it. And then Source helps us deal with it. So before we get to all of that, which a lot of that is in the GIA report, we're going to start by going through our field messenger reports and some of the other news information that we put out this week. And then, we'll wrap it up with the GIA. So let's go ahead and get started. Here is the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. All right, let's talk about our awesome field messenger reports for the week. Our field messengers are people just like you. They realize that the news that they're getting from mainstream media and alternative media isn't real. And so if we really want to know what's going on throughout the world, it's up to us to share that information with one another. And that's what our field messengers are all about. You don't have to have any experience, but we all have these phones, right? We've got a camera on us pretty much at all times. Show us what's going on. Record some video, do a little voiceover for us. Doesn't have to be fancy. In fact, we have an entire production team that can help you with this. So we can help you put your story together, or at least, come up with some ideas, the things you could talk about, and then leave the editing up to us. You just send us all your material. We'll take care of it and put it in a report format and then put it on the news. Pretty cool, huh? So let's talk about some of the stories that we presented to you guys this week from our field messengers, starting with Sue from Australia. And she is in the area known as the Sunshine Coast of Australia. She is talking about the housing crisis over there. High prices are causing people to live in caravans and buses and small mobile homes. And it gets worse because there are people that are trying to help. Let's say there's people that have land that say, hey, if you want to park your mobile home, your caravan, your bus, whatever it is, your tent on our property, it's fine. There's people out there doing that saying, hey, just come and be on our land, not a big deal. In fact, in this report, Sue interviewed someone who was starting to have trouble because they were letting people stay on their property. She talks to one of the families that's in this beautiful tiny home, which is nicer than a lot of apartments I've seen. So, it's not like, it's an eyesore per se. I mean, people are just trying to help out other people, and they're getting some pushback from local authorities. So that is Sue's report. Amy out of New Jersey, which is a state in the United States, takes us clay target shooting. Now, I've never been, so this was something brand new for me, but she talks about how this practice began, and she says it's a way to improve your hunting skills without harming animals. And now it's just its own sport, so you don't have to actually, just use it as training. But you can, go out and do clay target shooting, and actually compete with it. So she shows us everything that's involved, everything from racking it up in the clay shooter. I don't know what it's called. I'm going to call it a clay shooter to having, what type of shotgun do you have? And, how does this all work? And we get to see really good people actually shooting stuff in the sky and just learn a little bit more about why they do it and how does the whole thing come together. So it was interesting. Jason out of Australia, he's actually in Western Australia, talks about a process called aircrete. So this is an innovative way of building materials, right? So instead of just using cement or something like that, it combines multiple things, cement being one of them, water, and a foaming agent to create a lightweight yet durable product. And you can build other structures with this. And he interviews someone from, I think the company was called Sacred Domes, and they were having a workshop to show people how this is done. And the reason they do this is their whole intention is to help people think kind of outside the proverbial box so that they don't get stuck in the so-called system, right? Do you have to have, you have to live in an apartment? Do you have to live in, the housing that is standard in your community? Not necessarily. Can we think a little bit differently about ways to sustain ourselves and live a sustainable life without being, every time we kind of go along with the system, we're giving them money, we're giving them time and energy and all of that. Is there a way to get off the system? And so I love this way of thinking. And Jason did a really good job of, showing us, how this whole process works and what is aircrete and how do you put it together and you mix it and you do all this kind of stuff. And then you've got this really cool kind of igloo looking, but, cement structure, which a lot of things can be done with that. So very cool report. RK Surjit out of India shares with us an event. I'll call it an event. I think it's like for a few days. It's called the Mother's Market. It's in Manipur, India. And he says it's a powerful symbol of women's empowerment. So it's a marketplace. It's entirely run by women. And I believe he said, I hope I get this right, it started in the 16th century. That's a long time. If I heard it right, that's a long time. And what I saw was at least 3 buildings worth, and these are huge, huge buildings. And there are also people outside, but all of this is like just full of vendors. And they're all women. And they sell all different types of products. And this is something that the area is known for. And it obviously helps the families, and it, probably helps the women as well, kind of get out of their daily routine and, interact with people and, just show off their talents. Because some of this is paintings and pottery. Some of it's food. It's kind of all over the map. There are some bags that I saw in the video. So really cool idea. Really nice way for those women to get out and do something for themselves and their community. Sandra out of Texas, another state in the U.S., shares with us how a local organization is actively supporting a growing group of parents who are choosing to homeschool their kids. And what does that look like, right? Because homeschooling can look different for different families. I'm actually homeschooling my younger girls right now. I've got 4 kids. 2 older boys are in public schools still. That's what they wanted to do. And with our younger girls, we're homeschooling them. And even what we do looks a lot different than this. In this video, I believe there was one teacher that was coming and teaching multiple kids of different ages and different topics and things like that. There isn't one way to, I hate to use the word educate, but to learn, to grow, right? And so I love that different communities are thinking about this, especially since the whole COVID thing. I think it woke a lot of people up to, okay, so we're doing this online thing. Why are we doing this? And really thinking about schooling, another word I'm not crazy about, but you know what I mean. How do we help our kids learn and grow in the best way possible? And so this was a great little project to see kind of the inside and how one community is handling homeschooling. Kirsten from Switzerland. This kind of ties into homeschooling because there's a group of homeschoolers in, I'm going to say Baden, Switzerland, I believe it is, that were participating in a bookmaking learning activity. So this is something, man, at least here in the U.S., you would never get a chance to see. It's another beautiful thing about homeschooling is you can take your kids and show them these incredible things that you just can't do with a large classroom of children, per se. And so in this story, Kirsten shows us this, when I say factory, it's more like a business, okay? And yes, they do bind books together, and these homeschoolers had an opportunity to bind their books, to emboss their names on it, or some sort of title. This is something that most students would not get a chance to see. You just kind of see the book in its finished form. And a lot of times we don't really think about this kind of stuff. But this sparks creativity and imagination. And I loved it. I was like, oh, is there one of those near where I live? Because I would love my girls to check out something like that and learn more about how books are made. All right, Kim from Oregon in the United States, another state, talks to us about her no-dig garden. If you haven't seen this before, there's a lot of videos on YouTube. You can learn more about it. But this is one of the biggest gardening trends in recent years. And it is exactly what it says. When you think about gardening, you think about kind of, putting your shovel in and digging, and there's like a lot of manual labor. I'm not going to say there's no effort in putting these together because there definitely is. But you don't have like all of that messing with the soil. You're literally starting on top. Usually there's cardboard or something you put down. Then the soil goes over top of it. You need to create rows so you can walk through. And this is what Kim guides us through, is how she sets up her no-dig garden. It's nice. It keeps the soil intact and the integrity of the soil structure, which can be really important. There's so many things happening in our soil. think of all the microorganisms. And every time we dig and we, mess with the dirt, we are affecting the ecosystem of the area. And so maybe there's a better way to do it. And it really depends on what you're planning to. But if you're interested in that, I highly encourage you guys to check out this video and see Kim's progress in her no-dig garden. Also related to that, Helen out of Australia did a report on her wicking vegetable garden. So this is a different type of bed, okay, where she is going to be growing vegetables, a garden bed. And it's different because it actually has a water reservoir under the soil, which keeps it consistently moist. When you think about needing to, water your vegetables, your plants, and things like that, this is something that is maybe a little bit more to set up, right? In terms of time, probably even resources, but maybe less work overall. And so Helen actually takes us through the whole process, kind of like Kim did, of how to do this from scratch and, how she decided where to put the garden in her yard. And, it kind of reminded me because you have to have like that black plastic down because you don't want the water to go into the soil, right? You want to keep it above for the plants. It reminded me kind of if you were putting in like a small pond in your yard. Some of the process is, kind of similar to that. But if you guys are interested, check out the report. And our final field messenger report for the week comes from Harrison out of Kenya. And he shows us the ancient method of using oxen to plow fields. Because we think, at least a lot of us, when I think of plowing a field, I think of machinery, right? Well, that may not be possible in certain places in the world. They may not have the money for that. They may, have no means of getting the machinery to where they need to get to. Maybe it's in a challenging location, but you can probably get oxen to plow your fields. And so Harrison takes us through the process. Amazingly straight lines. That was one thing I was looking at because, sometimes it's difficult to even walk a straight line. Our bodies are kind of all over the place. But when you've got a plow and you've got, I think there were 2 oxen in this video. It's just really interesting. He just shows us how the whole process is done. In his situation, I believe he wanted to, it was a pumpkin patch, I believe he said, and he wanted a pumpkin field. And he wanted to plant maize and cassava. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. Cassava? Tomato. But he wanted to, plant something different in the area, and he just showed us how it was done. And it created really deep grooves in the soil. So if you're planting seeds and you want to make sure there's enough water, it was very effective. Very interesting. All right, here are some of the news stories, the more in-depth news stories that we worked on for you guys this week, our research and our writing team. We talked about gambling addiction. And obviously this can be a global issue. It impacts people from all backgrounds. And some nasty stuff comes with this. It leads to debt, reduced spending on essentials, lower productivity, even criminal behavior. And the reason we're talking about this now is because Brazil has had some bad experience with this. They've had a rise in gambling addiction since online betting was legalized in 2018. And now they are enacting some measures to help regulate this. They're trying to tax the industry to mitigate some of their problems. So we thought, let's talk about this a little bit. Let's talk about addiction and what actually happens with this. And we found that gambling shares characteristics with drug and alcohol addiction. It actually activates the brain's reward system in a similar fashion, causing compulsive behaviors.
Gambling addiction is often also called gambling disorder or problem gambling. It's a cluster of behaviours around gambling that tend to persist for a significant amount of time. To meet formal criteria, you need to meet 4 of the following criteria, and that includes a person feeling that they need to keep on going back to win back losses, feeling that you need to gamble when you're feeling low or depressed to escape negative mood states, a feeling that you need to gamble with more and more money to get that same feeling, that same rush when you gamble, inability to stop gambling even when you want to, feelings of restlessness or irritability when you're trying to cut back and you can't. Some of the characteristics of problem gambling also include trying to cover up your gambling behaviour, for example, by lying or deceiving your family or friends around it. It can also be characterised by needing to depend on other people to pay back money for your losses or cover debts.
So this addiction can be especially damaging for teenagers who are typically more susceptible due to their brain's development and exposure to enticing, right? Like when they're playing on all those, social media, let's just flip through videos for like 3 hours. So we have to consider that. Recovery is possible with the right support, including professional counseling and healthy coping mechanisms. Resources are also available to help guide people toward recovery and help them regain control over their lives. This is just one more thing, that the powers that be kind of threw at us to like keep us busy, to create these kind of things so we didn't use all of our talents, all of our gifts that we as humans have. Just one more thing to keep us busy and, not able to function properly. All right, we also did a story about misinterpreted drug tests. Now, believe it or not, this happens quite a bit, especially through a very popular way of testing through your strands of your hair. And this can lead to severe consequences, as we found out, particularly in family court decisions regarding child custody, because they found that these tests, there's some issues here. While the tests aim to detect drug use by identifying traces left in your hair, they are prone to inaccuracies due to various factors, such as hair color. So if you dye your hair, which a lot of women do, that can impact things, your race, also your environmental exposure.
Faulty drug tests can make you lose custody of your baby. Most states require hospitals to identify newborns who are exposed to drugs in the womb and to alert child welfare agencies. Tens of thousands of babies are reported each year, but there's no guarantee that the drug test results are accurate. Many hospitals use cheap urine tests that can give false positive results around half the time, according to some studies. When that happens, child welfare workers or the police could forcibly separate you from your newborn. And research shows the decision to test often comes down to race or class bias. False positives can happen after taking common medications, eating everything bagels or lemon poppy seed muffins, like the ones Ashley Riley ate before giving birth.
It made me feel like I'm this horrible person, I'm this horrible mom, and no one knows me. They don't know who I am.
Birthing patients are not entitled to protections like confirmation tests to prevent this, but most of the caseworkers who investigate them are entitled to those protections.
So we're starting to realize that, these tests aren't necessarily what we thought they were. To combat these issues, some hospitals are shifting their policies. That's a good thing. Major health organizations now suggest verbal screenings over blanket drug testing. Those affected by false positives should seek retests and support from medical professionals, obviously someone you trust, ensuring test results are fully contextualized before conclusions are drawn. All right, skin-to-skin contact. So this is something that I learned a lot about when my kids were being born many years ago. My youngest, my twins, are now 11, so it's been a hot minute. But skin-to-skin contact, it's also called kangaroo care. It is an ancient practice, and we're kind of like finding out about this, relearning about this, and some of it seems like duh, but at least we're catching on to this again, okay? It's very significant for parents and their newborns. And think about, the term kangaroo care, right? So the little Joey goes in the kangaroo, right? It's right next to mama entire time, can feel the mom's heartbeat. We're talking about doing something similar with our newborns, literally laying your child on your chest. And by the way, this is great for dads, for adoptive parents. You really want to keep it probably to, the main people working with the kid, not necessarily caring for the kid, right? So the parents, essentially. And it's just about creating that bond. And this has reemerged in modern medicine. It started to come back in the 1970s. out of Colombia, believe it or not, because it was found to improve outcomes for premature babies. And research has shown that it supports physical and emotional development. It boosts the mother's oxytocin levels to promote bonding and aid in recovery, and reduces stress by lowering cortisol.
After baby's born, we love baby to go right up to mom's abdomen and be skin to skin. That skin to skin contact can help baby's temperature to be regulated. Mama is the best temperature regulator there is, better than any warmer. So baby will just be skin to skin, and that also facilitates breastfeeding. Just being next to mom's skin to skin keeps the blood sugar stable. And they think that the milk smells like amniotic fluid, and babies are attracted to the scent. So when they're skin to skin, it helps them to have that first feeding and be right there to have that first feeding, and keeps them really stable in that first hour postpartum. And for the weeks after, skin to skin is fabulous, and it's good for moms and dads and all partners to do.
So I talked a little bit about newborn babies, specifically for NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit. For babies in that unit, prolonged skin-to-skin sessions can enhance growth and healing, as it does for all babies, but especially the wee little ones that need a little bit more support. Experts suggest at least 1 to 2 hours daily for newborns, but there is no limit, you guys. When my kids were first born, we did this not 24 hours a day, but most of the time until mama needed a little break. We did this constantly, and it was one of my favorite things to do that, especially when they're wee little and they could just lay right on your chest. Try to do that with twins. I actually did it with twins. It can be done. Just remember, this is about connection, not perfection. So it may take a little bit of time to adapt to it. Circumstances may not be ideal all the time for it. Give yourself a break. Just do what feels natural with your child. Do you remember when kids were first born, when babies were first born, they'd be whisked away from their parents and not have that contact? That's what we're trying to avoid, right? Mom and baby, dad and baby, whatever your situation happens to be, connect with your child. Let's talk about antibiotics, right? It has revolutionized medicine. We're not saying it hasn't, but overuse and misuse have led to the rise of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, also known as superbugs, making infections harder to treat.
It is always scary when someone in your family is being admitted to hospital. Even if it's just for a routine procedure, no one wants to stay longer in hospital than they have to, and healthcare-acquired infections happen all the time. These are infections that immunocompromised patients catch while in hospital and are increasingly caused by superbugs that cannot be killed by any drugs on the market. Prevention is always better than cure. So how do we prevent superbugs from emerging in the first place? When I use the term superbug, I'm talking about bacteria that have developed resistance against a broad range of drugs, namely antibiotics targeted at killing them. Now, some bacteria are just naturally resistant to some antibiotics, and it wasn't a big deal once upon a time. We would simply go to another antibiotic in our arsenal, built up over decades of scientific research and drug discovery. But we're running out of options. It has been years since a brand new category of antibiotic was discovered, and bacteria had developed mechanisms to defend against all of them.
Key drivers of this problem include overprescription, poor hospital hygiene, and widespread antibiotic use in farming, believe it or not, contributing to drug-resistant strains that can then spread to humans. The effectiveness of antibiotics is critical for life-saving procedures, and their misuse can lead to serious side effects and complications. In developing countries, the lack of regulatory system exacerbates this issue. While promising alternatives like phage therapy and medicinal plants are being explored, that's a good thing, natural remedies show potential with fewer side effects and effective antimicrobial properties. These treatments may require careful use as they can interact with medications. You want to be careful of that and consult with a healthcare professional you trust before trying, of course, any new therapies. We know animal testing has long been used in scientific research to develop treatments, to test product safety, study diseases, but it also raises significant ethical concerns over animal suffering. More than 100 million animals suffer and die annually in the U.S. for various tests, and many experiments are unreliable due to the biological differences between animals and humans. So they may be doing this test and it may not even matter because humans and animals are not the same thing. Newsflash, right? While animal testing is common in healthcare, it is increasingly being replaced by other innovative therapies such as cell cultures, organ-on-chip technology, you can research that, and computer simulations, which offer more humane and accurate results. However, misleading labeling practices can make it difficult for consumers to know which products are truly cruelty-free. So one of the things we did in this report is we showed you the different labels. So if this is important to you, check out this report. We'll show you how can you really tell by looking at a packaging if something is actually cruelty-free, because they can put a lot of stuff on there, but if it doesn't have certain symbols, then really there's no other party, third party that is taking a look at this. They're just saying whatever they want to say for marketing purposes. So be careful. Real estate crowdfunding has emerged as an innovative solution for those who want to invest in property without the high costs or responsibilities of being a landlord. It allows investors to pool funds online to back various real estate projects, picking opportunities that align with their preferences.
Ever dreamt of owning real estate, but it seems too expensive? There's a new way in. Real estate crowdfunding. Basically, you pool your money with other investors online to invest in properties together. Think of it like buying slices of a giant property pie. This means you can forget about huge down payments. You can start with a smaller amount and potentially see good returns. Plus, there are different types of investments, so you can find something that fits for your risk appetite. With crowdfunding, you are just an investor, so you can relax while your investment grows. Plus, the risk is shared with a large group of people, so you are not on the hook for everything.
Crowdfunding has helped make real estate more accessible and introduce new opportunities like affordable housing and also eco-friendly projects. For those seeking different paths, real estate investment trusts, also known as REITs, syndications, or direct property ownership are also worth exploring. Each has its own unique advantages and disadvantages. Drug addiction deeply impacts a person's health, behavior, thoughts, emotions. It alters brain chemistry, making recovery more challenging. Medication-assisted treatments, also called MATs, M-A-T, has become a critical tool for managing addiction. They can help reduce cravings, ease withdrawal, lower relapse risk when combined with therapy. Despite concerns that MATs, these medication-assisted treatments, might be trading one drug for another, right? Because you're taking a drug to try to come off another drug. It is currently, in our healthcare system, recognized as the gold standard for treating opioid addiction. However, and this is the main part of our whole report, these medications pose additional challenges, particularly for pregnant women who risk legal scrutiny and potential separation from their babies if they use a prescribed MAT. Take a listen to this.
Methadone is an opioid medication that is synthetic or man-made, and it is used in the treatment of addiction for people who have struggles with addiction to heroin or other opioid medications. So methadone is an opioid, and you can get an addiction to methadone. However, it is generally used in medical settings to help you come off of the other opioids that you may be addicted to. If you are on methadone, it's not a medication that you can just quit cold turkey. And it's something that you would need to come off slowly, and most safely that would be done in a medical detox setting.
So that's just one anti-addiction medication, and that can be very complicated, right? You're kind of trading one drug for another drug, and where does it end, right? Proper medical supervision is essential to prevent misuse, and manage potential complications. Now, addition to these MATs, right, medication-assisted treatments, holistic treatments like therapy, medication, and acupuncture can complement recovery, offering a well-rounded approach. So you may want to consider that. While overcoming addiction can be difficult, especially if you have been addicted for a long time, professional support, and the right combination of treatments, recovery is certainly achievable. We hope more and more people are on that path without, all the craziness in the world. We truly believe things are going to lighten up here, and people will really be able to achieve true health, not just one medication for another, but really feel good about themselves and get off some of these things that have made our lives a little bit more comfortable, but have a lot of risks. Speaking of risks, let's talk about at-risk children in the UK. So in England, hundreds of vulnerable school-aged children are placed in illegal and unregulated homes each year due to a shortage of spaces in secure local authority units. Now, this exposes them to higher risks of harm. And this is what the story is about. These homes can often lack oversight and fail to ensure that the adults are actually providing the care and that they're qualified. This leads to unsafe conditions and neglect. Between April of 2023 and March of 2024, Ofsted identified more than 900 unregistered settings, mostly run by private companies, charging similar fees or even higher than homes that are actually registered. Children in these environments can face a lot of trauma and are frequently isolated from their families. Sometimes they're denied education. They're subject to harsh conditions, including restraints and sedatives. And all this falls under the Deprivation of Liberty Orders, or DOL. While Scotland and Northern Ireland have stricter regulations for these types of cases, England and Wales face ongoing challenges with inadequate, unsafe placements that hinder children's development and well-being. Of course, addressing these issues requires a commitment to regulated supportive care, ensuring that all children are safe, valued, and equipped for a brighter future. And this isn't just happening in the UK, guys. That's what the story focused on. But I think we can all agree that, here where I am in the US, our whole system, our foster care system and everything has to completely change. And we know some of the crazy things that they, intend to take our kids away from us in various circumstances, and they go missing and go into the hands of the deep state. And it's not a good future for them, obviously, at that point. We have to take care of our children. This story is just shining a light on a situation that the UK is experiencing. And our final story is about high vet bills. If you have a pet, you've probably noticed the rising cost of veterinary visits is a significant concern for pet owners. Routine checkups are becoming increasingly expensive. Everything, I feel like, because we have a dog, everything I feel like is getting more expensive. From July 2023 to July 2024, the cost of veterinary services, at least in the US, rose by 6.2%. And these are mainly driven by factors related to corporate influence. But you also have a little bit of inflation in there, some staffing shortages. One of the things that we realized in doing this story is a big portion of the reason costs are going up is because you have these independent practices. Their fees are going up. So they end up getting bought out by these private equity firms. They're turned into these corporate practices, and that's really contributing to these higher prices. In fact, a lot of times the name of the business doesn't change, except the only reason things have changed is because your bill goes up and you're like, what in the world happened?
So what really is a huge thing is we're looking at nearly half of everyone who ever goes to see a veterinarian. You're bringing in your dog or cat. You're probably going to a corporate practice. They're concerned about this. Corporations ultimately work to generate a large profit. They're not necessarily being there just for the good of your dog, the good of your cat. And they're run by CEOs. These are business people. These are not veterinarians. They're looking at standardized practices in terms of whoever is working in that veterinary clinic. There's going to be a certain checklist in terms of how you go into an exam room, how you approach a client, the list of things that you're going to say to that client. Then after you've done your exam, then you're going to talk about additional services. Maybe you need to have that preventive wellness exam. Oh, we got some new diagnostics. We've got an in-house ultrasound. Maybe we can do a little preventive ultrasound. Maybe you can try our new digital x-ray. We can pick something up. Maybe we'll catch it before it becomes a problem.
I ever had that happen? You take your dog or your cat in and they're like, we're going to do an x-ray for this and we're going to test for this. And you're like, yeah, how much is that going to cost? Now, despite these challenges, there are many amazing vets out there that are truly committed to their work. You need to find one of those. There's also nonprofit initiatives, and holistic approaches are expanding. Holistic vets offer educational content on alternative treatments. A lot of this is being done online, so you can go to YouTube and find some content there, maybe get part of their newsletter list. But they are promoting preventative care and integrative medicine. Pet owners can save some money. Also, if you want to look for discounts, you can buy in bulk. Handling basic grooming tasks at home if you're a very patient person and you don't have a crazy dog like me. Okay, we made it. We are now at the Global Intelligence Agency Operation Report Update. That is a mouthful. And as I said at the beginning of this podcast, holy cow, you guys, get out your notebooks. It was a crazy week. Last week I was telling you about all the crazy energies out there. My body has been all over the place as far as weird things happening with it. And, you know, Kim told us last week, well, she's told us this several times, about how we as humans are celestials. That means we exist in multiple places at multiple times. And I have really felt, I don't know if you guys have felt this over the last couple weeks, that my 3D body is struggling because I'm doing other things in other places, right? Because I not only exist here on Earth in the third dimension, but I'm somewhere else kicking some butt. I can tell you that because I've had to take numerous naps this last couple weeks. You guys know my voice was going in and out for the last, couple of weeks as well. I've been coughing. My 3D body has been a mess. So I've been really interested to see what in the world is going on here. Because we know that there's so much going on that maybe we don't fully understand, like our human minds don't fully understand. And Kim shed a lot of light on that this week. So let's start off with what she talked about on Monday. As you have noticed, if you have heard anything with mainstream media, there's a lot going on in Syria. Now, their president is Assad. Okay. Kim says he's actually quite ill. And he hasn't been in the country for a while, by the way. They made it seem like in mainstream media that, he, just fled. And then you had these rebels come in and you see all these pictures of the rebels at the, presidential palace doing all this stuff. He's been gone for a long time. In fact, he's been in Russia. I don't know if his wife was with him right away, but I believe they're now both in Russia. Russia is protecting him. They've actually granted him asylum. But like I said, he's quite ill. We're not really sure what's going on with that. So he's been out of his country, out of the presidential palace for a long time. You've probably seen some video on social media. If you end up watching Monday's GIA report, you'll see a lot more of it. I highly recommend that you actually watch this report because she shows, she shows a lot of video of what's going on with some of the prisoners in Syria. There is a prison there called the Sudnaya prison. And it is very well known, Kim says, for people going in and not coming out. But we did not understand the full extent of this prison until this last week and a half. So there are multiple levels to this prison. And like I said, you've probably seen clips on social media with these rebels. They call them rebels, but which side is good and which side is bad? Rebels makes it seem like they're bad. What they're doing is coming in and trying to free people out of this prison. Now, this is not a jailbreak, guys. This is not just come in and get some people. Kim estimated that there were 175,000 or so people that are stuck in this so-called prison, but it gets a lot more crazy than that. So we want to talk a little bit about why this is happening right now. And I'm going to let Kim tell the story. This is actually a really long clip. I think it's at least 20 minutes long. It starts by her talking about a whistleblower that said, hey, you got to come in here and free these prisoners. But we are going to talk about a lot of stuff here that we never knew existed. And it's, I think, going to explain a lot of things. So here's Kim.
A whistleblower who worked in said prisons, let's just say, was in Cyprus. And he reached out to these groups when he was in Cyprus and said that they turned off all the air vents underground and a lot of people are going to die. He also reported that there were 100,000 prisoners or more there, and if they were going to save them, they had to start now. This was about 48 hours ago. And yeah, in part, they have been trying. There are a lot of videos that are out there that have been released throughout the internet talking about rescue operations. They have also been discussing the fact that they are having a hard time finding the entrance to these deeper underground facilities. Now, they've gotten down to about the first or second basement, possibly even third at this point, at the time of this recording. And they're having a difficult time finding a way to get through to the other levels. See, the first few were easy. The actual entrance to the deeper underground part of these prisons and facilities is actually over under the Tishrin Dam near Aleppo. And this facility here is in Damascus, which led us to a lot of discoveries as far as this base. We do have some people that are in Syria that have been reporting back that they need help. They need to save these people. They need to get them out of there or they're all going to die. And maybe based on what we saw happening in these facilities when we looked into it a lot more, death would probably be a lot more pleasant than what they were going through. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, well, it's a Middle Eastern prison. It's bound to be less humane than prisons in other countries, maybe in Europe or the US, but that's absolutely not true. This here was actually a facility that performed a lot of human experimentation. So when you get down to some of the lower levels, those people, and I use that term lightly, are barely even human anymore. And it's not because they were beaten or kept in the dark or anything like that. It has to do with the fact that this was a secret space program base and has been for a long time. The Russians have been participating in it. Assad has profited heavily by granting people access to this personally. They are observing, even on the basement level, paranormal activity going on in this facility, which is 100% true. There's a lot of stuff down there. They also showed these machines where they would actually take the beings, put them on a stake, take the people and put them on a stake, drain all their blood out, and we know why the deep state loves to do that. And then they would actually put them in a machine, like a compression machine, which is very similar to like what they do in a junkyard with old cars. They'll crush them and then, I guess, making them easier for storage. I don't know. This is once they pass away, if they don't make it through whatever torture or eugenics experiments they're doing on these people. The people that are brought here are not just Syrian. They are they could be from anywhere. This is not about political prisoners or war prisoners. It's just whoever serves their purpose in this particular area. And there are other areas of the world like this one. There's another facility just like it in Utah. And definitely the Mormon Church or Mormon Temple, however you want to say that, is involved in that facility. The Amish are also involved in other facilities as well. These are just the humans that are participating. Almost all of the Trump operatives are involved in these situations. I don't know where these people get these videos of him saving babies from dumbs, but I don't see him there with all these people trying to save people. Let's start talking about the facility and how big these facilities actually are. There are 33 that we have found in different parts of the world in the last 48 hours, I would say, and plenty of other facilities that we found within the last few days. This particular facility is kind of shaped a little bit like a crescent. So it does extend just a small amount into Syria, but it basically goes all the way under the sea here and over to Cyprus. It's enormous. You know, they're a little bit far off from where they need to be. They have saved a lot of people, so that's a positive thing. I'm glad to hear that. But this whole area here is full. You know, if you know the region, if you know the area, this is a very large underground base full of hundreds of, or 100,000 is what this gentleman said, which I do agree. I think there's more than that, about 175,000 people that have been stuck in this underground facility. So the vents, why did the vents go off? Why is there no air going in there? And why did this guy report that a lot of people are going to die if nobody goes in and saves them? And what were they trying to get these rebels to do? In part, I almost think it was a trap, because they already experienced, even just in the regular basement levels, not even getting down into the deep underground military base level, they already experienced paranormal activity. You know, things were flying off at shelves. People were attacked by nothing they could actually see. And I know that feeling because this week has been really rough. So was last week. Attacked by things that they can't see and things they don't understand. There's no person standing there with a gun. This is what these rebel groups would understand. But we have a big problem, Houston. So this little facility, you know, we call it little now. I mean, it's still pretty good size, was about here. Now, if you took and drew a circle all the way through Portugal, all the way through Norway, all the way through part of Russia, down to Kazakhstan, you would find within this outer rim of the circle, you would find 32 facilities just like this one. Right here in Austria was the 33rd in the center. Now, gee, wonder why Hitler was doing what Hitler was doing, and why the Russians are doing what the Russians are doing, and why does everybody want to control this one? Wouldn't they want this one? Well, no. For some reason, a lot of these facilities that were dotted through this area here that you see along this line, a lot of these different facilities were not human accessible, meaning they did not build. There was a couple, yes, sure, but a lot of them were not, they did not have a deep underground military base at all of the facilities where humans were permitted to enter or exit. Now, in some cases, the humans were allowed to bring other humans as sacrifices, I guess you would say, through to like an entryway. There was definitely one up near Rotterdam that connected all the way through Denmark and definitely through Germany to Austria. So there, I can see why they would have wanted control of this particular one, just simply because there were humans that were going in and out of there, and these humans were permitted to be there for a particular reason by agreement, which is no longer enforceable. Technically, I would call most of the human workers, the SSP in this case, I would call them cannon fodder, because they were being used. Used by what? Oh, dear. Well, here's where the rest of the story comes in. This little area of Syria here is what you would call a stargates, plural, stargate portal area to a place we call the Neitherworld. Well, what's happened in the last, I would say it started really ramping up around the 11th of November, but something exploded definitely on Friday of last week, Thursday or Friday, where we started seeing these beings here, and I'm looking at these beings, we're definitely taking them out. We're closing portals. We're trying to do all the things as fast as we can. And I'm like, wait, we have no one left in the lower astral. Who the heck is this? And to describe these beings to you, they are extremely tall. I would say the leaders or the rulers are probably in an excess of 20 to 25 feet tall, maybe even taller in some cases. They look like if you were to picture in your mind a picture of the devil or Satan, that's what these things look like. They have horns. They are very muscular. They do have 2 arms, 2 legs. They definitely have a reptilian-like skin. They have red eyes in most cases. I've seen these before only once in a vision. And to tell you about the vision in brief, and this made a lot of sense to me in the last 5 days. The vision in brief was one of my trips up to Source. So all of the instructions, and I know I've said this repeatedly, for the things I do and the things that I find and it's a direct connection to Source. Are there others that do this too? Yes, I'm sure there are. Do we know a few of them? Yes, we do. Do we talk to other people, other folks in different places that also help us? Yes, we do. So there's a definite collaborative effort, as I've explained to you before. Okay, so in one of my visits, and this was over a decade ago, before I met anybody that you've seen come and go in the last few years, I was going up to Source to get the instructions, and there was a war going on in quote unquote heaven. And I might have told you this story before. As there was a war up there were beings that looked just like this. So there was the leader that was a lot taller than the other ones, but they all pretty much looked the same, just shorter versions of the same. And there are beings that live up there. And I would say these beings look like floating balls of light. And of course, this is when you get out from what I call the center, the all that is. And those beings were fighting these other, which looked like demon beings to me at the time, because the demon beings were trying to take over Source's position. And that I knew. I wasn't sure how this was going to happen or when it actually took place, but apparently it actually did take place. Now remember there is no space and there's no time like we have here. Like you could say, oh, I was, on last Tuesday, this was the date and I was here and I did this, or I've got to be there at 3:00. There's no time up there. So this could have been something that took place in what I consider the past, meaning because I'm here and I'm human and I'm on Earth. So I could say, well, I did that when I was younger. I did that in a different lifetime. I did that in the future. I did that current time. I don't know. At the time, obviously, it looked like it was happening right now to me. So then every day for 3 days when I went up there after these beings were quote unquote defeated, at least I thought so, there was a definite happiness and joy going on there. There was a lot of high frequencies. Things were better. Once I thought that these beings were quote unquote behind bars. So I didn't realize that this war had extended for a very long period of time. So much so, we were not here on Earth, were not unaffected by this war. So what took place? When this war took place, apparently these beings have been going in and out of this all thing as they poked a hole directly into the all that is. and begin to implant what I call space junk into these locations, both in anti-source and neutral source and source, so that it could harness the power of all three. This being was originally a lower astral being, probably from about the 7th density, but for some reason, everybody calls him the ultimate black magician. I call him the destroyer. You can call him Satan, you can call it whatever you want, but let's call it one of the most evil people that is actually mentioned in our history by name. Mentioned as a hero, actually, of the Middle East. Isn't that funny? Because he could harness the power of all three, he began to utilize and create, firstly, fake source. He also created fake neutral source and fake anti-source. He also decided to create an AI to replace the Alpha Omega AI, and he called it Ollie's, or the All. There are humans walking this planet that are infected with this AI, meaning it gives them instructions to their brain. So we find out. So a second universe is created, we call the Neitherworld, or that's what Source calls it, the Neitherworld. It's neither of source, it's neither of anti-source, it's not of neutral source, it's not a part of creation, it is the Neitherworld, and exists outside of the universe, and in an area past what we call the fringe. So we know that the universe now is ever expanding. It's something that is, but there is definitely a fringe point to where there wasn't creation, so to speak, as it does expand. So this universe exists outside our universe. There has been a few instances where this being that created all his own realms, everything that existed over here, existed over there, created all his own realms, all those types of things, and was waiting for a particular time when he felt, or it felt, I should say, that it could take over. It has, definitely a creator now, according to itself, and it creates all by itself. It doesn't need source anymore, according to it. It has figured out a way to harness all the power and not need a continuous flow of power from source to recreate its universe. Therefore, it doesn't need, quote unquote, creation anymore. And this is the point that we came to within the last 45 days to 60 days. Now, the dumb humans, we call the deep state on this planet, and I mean the very high-ranking SSP people, knew of this being, partially because they were in communication with these beings at the portal place in Syria. They were having conversations in part there. Some of them even willingly accepted implants of Ali's, the AI, in their head. And they are now giving information to people like you on Twitter. Isn't that funny? One of them is anyway. But some of them are doing it, some of them are not. How do they know what's about to happen? Well, Ali's would tell them to their brain. Now it makes sense. They're not getting information from anti-source. Here we are thinking that I don't even know if they know. Do some of them know that this is what is going on? This is a lot of people didn't, because there are a lot of quiet people that have been following these SSP or Secret Space Program folks pretty religiously on this one here. So during the gateway of 11/11 this year, it was a little bit different this year, because I'm not even going to say it's an alignment, because that's not true. It's just a timing thing of creation of the Gilgamesh universe, we also call the Neitherworld, where it was able to firstly break into neutral source and the zero density. So the main portal, I guess you would say, for the entire universe exists at 0 point of the zero density, positive and negative, because anybody can use it. Interesting. Positive and negative. So negative things can go through it at certain times of year, and positive things can go through it. And during the gateway of 1111, both can use it. This is why the alignment with source and anti-source was so important. So these beings started infiltrating there. Now, turns out they have made in rapid order by this weekend, actually by Friday, Thursday, Friday, they managed to get to Earth. Now, they are having trouble because with the help of the corridors and the dumb humans, I'm going to call them the dumb humans because all they want is power and they don't realize they're being used like a tool, but that's fine. We'll take care of your mess. No problem. The dumb humans were trying to help these people escalate this point of entry all the way up to the 5th density. What it met with was some resistance right here. It could not break into the 6th density of existence. Could not break into the 6th density here. So it got stuck. So it tried to go back in through source and back in through anti-source, and it still got stuck. So how does that affect Earth? Now remember, Earth and our sun exist in all densities. To some degree, you could say that they were, even though our Earth is in the 3rd density, per se, it is shadowed all the way up and all the way down as part of being a keystone. They also shadowed it over here, as a matter of fact. So they created what you call a doppelganger or additional Earths over here. It was actually Earth to infinity over here, meaning there was an infinite number of Earths that this guy created. Now, to some degree, alleys, because the dumb humans allowed for infiltration, they became anchors for alleys on this side. So to some degree, they could use the Earths over here like voodoo dolls, and also you humans like voodoo dolls, and cause us a lot of problems. I would say to a lesser degree, but now, as of recently, these beings, he figured he created all he needed to create over there, and now he could destroy all of regular creation. Technically, it doesn't have the power yet to destroy all of creation, but it would be great if the entire universe, including source, had a Gilgamesh verse or a Neitherworld overlay. So there could be no more actual creation, and then he was going to recreate reality. Yeah, it's been a kind of a mess. So Syria was one of the points of invasion. Now, these beings, unfortunately, not only got stuck in the 5th density, but if they did manage to poke into the 3rd density, they could not get past the causal plane. Coming up in the other direction, they could not get past the 2nd density. So what you had is unknown forces throwing things around in the physical plane because they could still affect the physical plane from where they were at. You can affect the physical. Once you've hit the causal plane, it's now coming into creation. And now you can affect, if you are, let's just say, a lot more knowledgeable than us humans, you can definitely affect the physical reality from there. So we had, and I mean hundreds of thousands of these things that started flooding in here last Friday and Saturday. And of course, these dumb humans are like, yay, we're back. The Ollie's is here. We're so excited. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? You are a part of creation. You are no longer going to exist as a human being on this planet. You are no longer needed to charge a fake multiverse and fake creation and fake this and fake that. I'm like, it's going to kill you all too. But in the short term, that giant prison that you're seeing all over the internet in Syria, I'm going to go back to that for a second. Those humans were actually used to power both dark and light portals. This being that I've been fighting with now for days, this being actually staked claim, pretty much officially cut off that section there. And anything that this universe was taking from source, anti-source, and neutral source area, I'm going to say, because we don't really technically have an anti-source and neutral source, it's pretty much all source now, has been completely cut off. Are we done? I don't know. I don't know the answer to the question. My guess is going to be no, we're not done, because I can still tell where they are, and I can still tell you that something somewhere is still feeding into these people's heads that they are talking to the all that is, and they're not.
Holy cow. Okay, did you guys take some notes on that? We didn't even know the Neitherworld existed. You know, maybe in some video games, maybe in some ancient texts, you kind of wonder, well, is that hell? What is the Neitherworld? No, it's neither the Alpha, it's neither, not the Alphaverse, it's not the Omegaverse, it's the Neitherworld. Holy cow. All right, so that's a lot. That's a lot to take in. We see news reports of stuff going on in Syria. This is what I mean. Like, it's hard to have conversations with everyday people that are just going, the normies that are just kind of going about their everyday lives, because they want to talk about prisoners being released in Syria and like, you have no idea what's really happening. Did you see? I mean, I couldn't show you guys in that clip, but, there's shelves that are just kind of shaking and going all over the place. And like, there's real paranormal activity. And this is what these quote unquote rebels are seeing. And you find out it is tied to this completely different, what do you call it? World outside of the universe as we know it. What the heck? Okay, sorry, had to rant because I was like, once I got done on Monday listening to that report, I was like, no wonder my body is all over the place. There's a whole other world that's trying to destroy us right now. I don't know if you guys felt that way, but I was like, what is going on? Okay. So that was Monday's report, as if that wasn't enough, okay? So then on Wednesday, there actually wasn't Kim on video doing a GIA report, but she did release this statement, which I'll share with you right now. The secret space program / Trump operatives have inserted themselves into nearly every Middle Eastern country. Technically, they are talking to themselves, trying to arrange a war. At the same time, they are trying to figure out the best way to install martial law here in the U.S. They are discussing civil war or a 9/11 type event. They are hoping their alien invasion gets them where they need to go, as everything costs money, well, currency. In the meantime, we have planned a very successful fake out operation as it relates to Allie's AI, the Neitherworld, and their willing humans. The operation is not yet complete, and I, meaning Kim, don't want to speak about it publicly until the last phases play out. Right now, analysis points to around 48 hours unless something changes. Let's call this one, quote, Operation Shell Game, end quote. Let's just say source always has something up his sleeve right when we need it the most. Okay, so that was on Wednesday. On Friday, Kim released a report. It was a little bit later on in the day, so if you guys haven't had a chance to listen to it, I do recommend that you actually listen to the entire thing. But let me give you a rundown of some of the things that she discussed. Kim said there are some interesting things going on in the Durango, Silverton, Cortez area. Specifically, a lot more people are there than really should be there. Some of these people have kind of crept in over time, but there's other people with agendas there, non-friendly people. She said there was also an increase in non-friendly, non-human people. And she was working with some of the locals to help get that cleaned up. Okay, so they were going to impose some more restrictions, and it was going to take about 72 hours for them to get the people out that shouldn't be there. Let's talk a little bit more about these non-friendly, non-human people. What in the heck is going on? Now, I have to tell you that within the last couple months, have been in the Durango area, specifically in Silverton. And I can tell you, I have seen some of these non-human people. And once you see one, you can usually start to pick them out. And when you have an influx of them, you have to wonder, how is this happening? Who are these non-human people? Where are they coming from? So what Kim was able to figure out is there are 3 mountains in the area, and she goes into more detail about these mountains in her actual report. But the short story is these mountains form basically a triangle, and it creates basically a portal. And where does the portal go? The Neitherworld. Surprise, surprise. So these non-friendly, non-human people are Neitherworld people. And there's an increase of them. And they're walking about. And somehow they're able to do this. How are they able to do this? So listen to Kim's full report for more information on that. What I want to talk about is the source fake out. So what Kim alluded to in the statement that she made on Wednesday was that there was a very successful fake out operation. So I want to play that soundbite because I think it's important for us to understand that we are not alone in taking on all of these crazy situations, that Source really does have a plan. And I want to emphasize that as much as possible because sometimes it can feel like, what in the world? Like, why didn't we know about the Neitherworld? And the truth is, we didn't need to know about the Neitherworld until we needed to know about the Neitherworld. And Source understands that. But I want to talk about this fake out because Source is brilliant and knew what was going on the entire time and had a plan all along. So here's Kim talking about Source's plan.
There is some interesting things that were done in order to protect pretty much all of natural creation as the Neitherworld came to be. Another world was, so you would say, was created. And I know I've talked a lot about the hologram around Earth, and I've talked about how, we're working our way to removing it and moving into natural things and all of this kind of thing. And that was important. The terraforming of Earth, terraforming of the galaxy, so in a natural way, was important for what actually took place this week. So Source actually created a multiverse, or a replica of creation we would call Alpha and Omega. This separate multiverse created holograms not only of around our actual natural galaxy, but it also created a replica of all of creation and the whole multiple timelines and everything in it. And the reason why this was done, because this was finally explained to me why we're having one heck of a time getting rid of a hologram, the reason why this was actually done was to fake out the Neitherworld. So the Neitherworld didn't realize this was not actual creation. The Neitherworld only understood that there was some creation going on because the keystone was actually here, which is what everybody wants. Everybody wants to control the keystone of the multiverse. And, we've talked about that many, many times, and many, many folks, non-human and otherwise, have come and gone. So, to try to take over our little piece of the universe over here where we live. So The Neitherworld and its allies began replicating the hologram and creating the same over here with the intention of completely taking over all of creation. Well, the Alpha Omega hologram language is all it knew. It only knew the hologram that was Alpha Omega in its language. So when allies tried to come and take over, for example, the Golden Age AI, it's written in a completely different language it doesn't understand. It's like trying to install an Apple program on your PC or vice versa. It just doesn't. It's going to say, I can't run this program. You need the Windows version of that for your PC or the Apple version of that for your Apple. So same thing works in the universe. This was the protection measure for all of creation to prevent the Neitherworld at any given point in time from infecting the entire universe and, doing what we had, the situation that we had with the Omegaverse, where it was taking over Alpha. It had pretty much taken over most of the Omegaverse, as far as I know, have come to know. So Earth kind of hung out over here in a hologram, and there was a placeholder over here in actual creation. When we found this out, this was really, really interesting to me, because now I'm like, oh, look, we can finally find a way to get rid of that hologram and just move over into safety zone, which, has happened. So over here we moved. This was on Wednesday, actually. This is why I was working probably ridiculous hours on Wednesday. So over here we did move, and the hologram kind of remains here somewhat to some degree. Now, we did take over these portals with us when we moved the day before. So we did have, and we have had, some cleanup to do to prevent allies from coming here. The other thing that we found, very interesting, is allies had a decent relationship with those at Cheyenne Mountain. Remember everybody's going to Cheyenne to save the day? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't really think that's what the plan was. It also makes sense why within the last couple of years we saw the X or extermination program start running in Cheyenne, which we quickly turned off. But the thing we found under Cheyenne was the Cheyenne was built upon some space junk, and underneath Cheyenne was not quite a portal anymore. A lot of that had been shut down. But what we did have was a translator of creation. So it was kind of like a recording device, for lack of a better term, that would record creation, not only on Earth, but also in the whole galaxy. So Alice was trying to connect to that on 1212 as well underneath Cheyenne, so that it could now try to read the language of the universe, because remember, it's changed. So T times E over V equals, let's actually be like this, equals matter. And there's a whole language of source that goes along with that. So it is a light language, that's true, but the language has changed. So now we're kind of living in a universe that Alice doesn't completely understand. This is something the deep state didn't know when they tried their big takeover in the Middle East there, and they're wanting to control all of Syria, one of the main portals, and moving into Durango and the general area over here. And, it would have been great if they could get some of these others here, the Moscow. You've been watching what's happening with Ukraine recently. There's another uptick in that area. And of course, the quote unquote cowboys or deep state people, AKA mouthpiece, this administration, I guess, saying, oh, we're going to send weapons and long-range missiles to Russia that can reach Moscow. And gee, wonder why they wanted to do that. Now we know, now it's all kind of becoming very clear as to what's going on in the world. Obviously, Antarctica and the Arctic is a big place for the deep state to work and play. At least they've always tried to. There's been a lot of famous people that have gone there over the years. We see a lot of leaks coming out in the alternative media about this. Well, the Arctic and the Antarctic, quote unquote, overlays or portals would have actually gone down to 10 degrees north and south of the equator latitude. So it would have been almost like a cover over the entire planet if it had completed its takeover, as the Black Magician and allies wanted to do. But unfortunately for them, they were just trying to take over a hologram because we moved. We moved. It's been a little topsy-turvy. Don't get me wrong. It's not been a smooth transition over the last week or so. It's been really difficult, I know, over here. So I'm sure it's been very difficult for all of you too. But we moved. There are some tethers still here to the real Earth, as I explained, that we've been working on. And hopefully, that is just about over. We've definitely made some huge strides in the last couple of days. We intend to continue, obviously, working on this throughout the weekend.
And now is the weekend. So I'm sure Kim has been busy this entire weekend working on stuff. I can tell you I'm still feeling weird stuff with my body. So I think stuff is still going on. We shall see. Hopefully she's available to do another report on Monday and let us know what's going on. Another thing that was in the news that this was just really funny. In the news, there is talk about a repository at the Federal Reserve. Okay, repository of money. And Kim addressed this at the very end of Friday's report. So they're talking about this repository, and Kim's like, there's no repository at the Federal Reserve. Absolutely no reserve of money, that's, gonna, whatever, the deep state can use to their advantage. So what she realized is what they were actually talking about is the global repository that was built for us, the people. But probably because they thought their, crazy alien, skinwalker people were going to take over the planet and whatever, hand the keys over to the deep state. I don't understand the deep state. They think that they're immune. They think that these aliens actually want to help them. I mean, it's mind-blowing. Anyway, all the deep state can think about is getting control. Okay, they don't care if aliens come and do whatever to our planet. They just want control, and they want money. Okay, they want a lot of money. So they are promising a lot of things to a lot of people because they think that they're going to have access to the global repository. And I guess they thought they'd just shove it under the name of the Federal Reserve because that's something that most people have heard of. Okay, well, it's not. Okay, the global repository, they cannot touch it. They can't do anything with it. So they're promising a lot of money to a lot of people that they're never going to be able to fulfill. This is like a common thing with the deep state, right? So this is the funny part. Kim decided to rename the repository, at least on, whatever the people see, some sort of screen that says, oh, you've got these, these numbers, this amount of money or whatever. So they're promising all this money, but what's the name of the repository? What's the name of the account it's coming from? And Kim, this is probably one of the funniest things I've ever heard her do. She changed the name of the repository. She said, listen, I could call it, Kim's repository. I could, call it CARE repository or the GIA. But then they would just say, oh, I'm Kim, I'm CARE, I'm the GIA. So she has this on a rotating basis. She has the name changing. And the name is the following. Things like, phrases like Trump is dead. The U.S. government is broke. Everyone is broke. She just went down the list. Like anyone that they could ever borrow money from is broke. She said she even put swear words in there. And it rotates every few seconds. Like it says, the Federal Reserve is dead. The Federal Reserve has no money. This is the name of the repository. So can you imagine? They're saying this money is coming out of the Federal Reserve, some, repository at the Federal Reserve. So they go and try to tell whoever they're trying to make a deal with that, hey, yeah, you're going to get this money. It's coming out of this account. And then the people go and check and they're like, you mean it's coming out of the reserve Or the repository called the Federal Reserve is dead? Why would you call it the Federal Reserve is dead? Or the Federal Reserve has no money? I think it's genius. I was laughing my butt off because I, listen to the reports just like you guys listen to the reports. I was laughing my butt off at this. So will this help educate people? Because you got to wake them up. They have to know that these people that keep promising money, they don't have access to what they say they have access to. If they did, why would they name the account the Federal Reserve is dead? Or the Federal Reserve has no money? Oh my gosh. Hysterical. All right, so that was the last update that we had from Kim on Friday. We'll see what happens on Monday. I've been talking a lot and I can feel like I'm starting to cough. My voice is starting to go. So I'm going to wrap up this report. If you guys want more information about United Network and what we do, visit our website. Like I said, unitednetwork.earth. If you decide to become a member, you get access to all of our content the moment it comes out. That includes complete news updates, our New Earth interviews, which are really popular, the entire update from Kim when she does her GIA reports, and anything that we produce, all things restoration and where our beautiful planet is going despite the craziness of the deep state and this Neitherworld, which is neither here or there because it's going to go away, right? We're transitioning out of the hologram and we'll just leave all that nasty artificial stuff with the Netherworld people. All right, guys, thanks for listening. I appreciate you. This is The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.